Maya Henderson stood at the kitchen window, watching raindrops race down the glass while her coffee grew cold in her hands. The familiar weight of Saturday morning pressed against her chest. Another day she'd have to leave David with half-truths and careful smiles. "You're thinking too loud again," David's voice came from behind her, warm with the lazy contentment of weekend mornings. His arms encircled her waist, and she leaned back against his solid chest, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with sleep. "Am I?" She turned in his embrace, studying the face she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. David's green eyes held that gentle concern that made her heart ache with guilt. "I was just thinking about today." "Another one of your mysterious Saturday adventures?" His tone was light, but Maya caught the underlying tension. They'd been married for 8 months, and every weekend she disappeared for hours, with explanations that grew thinner each time. "I told you, it's complicated." Maya pressed her lips to his jaw, tasting the slight salt of his skin. "Some things from before, they don't just disappear when you get married." David's hands stilled on her hips. "Like Marcus?" The name hung between them like a blade. Maya felt her carefully constructed walls threatening to crumble. "David, you said he'd always be in your life," David continued, his voice carefully neutral. "I've tried to understand, Maya, I really have. But you disappear every weekend. You won't talk about where you go, and the only thing you've ever told me is that your ex will always be part of our lives." Maya pulled back to meet his gaze, seeing the hurt he tried so hard to hide. David was everything good in the world, patient, kind, trusting. He deserved better than the web of secrets she'd woven around their marriage. "It's not what you think," she whispered, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. "Marcus and I, what we have isn't romance, David. It never was. Not really." "Then what is it?" The question she'd been dreading for months hung in the air. Maya felt the familiar panic rising in her throat, the same feeling she'd had 2 years ago when she made a promise that changed everything. "I can't explain it yet, but I need you to trust me. Just a little longer." David studied her face, and Maya held her breath. Finally, he nodded, though the doubt remained in his eyes. "Okay," he said, "but Maya, I'm trying to build a life with you. If there's something I need to know—" "There is," she interrupted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "There's something huge I need to tell you, but not yet. Please." As Maya gathered her purse and keys, she felt David watching her every movement. The drive ahead seemed endless, filled with the weight of secrets that grew heavier each day. David waited exactly 30 minutes before following his wife's car through the winding streets of suburban Portland. His hands gripped the steering wheel as guilt and curiosity warred in his chest. He'd never followed Maya before, had always respected her need for space, but the strain was killing their marriage slowly. Maya's silver Honda turned into Riverside Park, and David parked 2 blocks away, his heart hammering. He walked through the tree-lined paths, feeling like a stranger in his own life, until he spotted her familiar figure near the playground. She wasn't alone. A dark-haired man sat beside her on a bench. Marcus, David realized with a jolt of recognition from the single photo Maya had shown him. But David's attention was immediately drawn to the small boy running toward Maya with outstretched arms. "Aunt Maya!" The child's voice carried across the playground, pure joy in every syllable. David watched in stunned silence as Maya scooped the boy into her arms, spinning him around while he giggled. The love in her face was unmistakable, radiant in a way David had never seen before. Marcus approached them, and the three formed a picture that made David's chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. "How was school this week, buddy?" Maya asked, settling the boy on her lap while Marcus sat beside them. "Mrs. Peterson says I'm really good at reading now," the boy, who couldn't be more than 6, announced proudly. "And I drew you a picture." As David crept closer, hiding behind an oak tree like a ridiculous spy, he caught fragments of their conversation. The boy called Maya Aunt Maya, but clung to her with the desperate affection of a child for his primary caregiver. Marcus spoke with the careful attention of someone walking through a minefield of grief. "He's been asking about Claire again," Marcus said quietly, while the boy played on the swings nearby.
David watched Maya's face crumple momentarily before she composed herself. What did you tell him? The same thing we agreed, that Mommy went to heaven but left him with people who love him very much. Does he remember anything? Sometimes he has nightmares about loud voices and Mommy crying. Marcus's voice was strained. The therapist thinks it's normal, but Maya, some days I wonder if we're doing the right thing. Maya reached for Marcus's hand, a gesture that would have destroyed David hours earlier, but now felt different, desperate rather than romantic. We promised her, Marcus. Claire made us promise. I know, but he's getting older. The questions are getting harder. David felt like he was drowning, puzzle pieces clicking into place but forming a picture he didn't understand. Claire, Maya had mentioned her sister exactly once, saying she died in an accident 2 years ago. But this boy, the secret life, the weight Maya carried? David? He spun around to find Maya standing behind him, her face pale with shock and something that looked like relief. I can explain, she said quickly, but David was already looking past her to Marcus, who held the boy protectively against his chest. Who is he? David asked, his voice barely a whisper. Maya's eyes filled with tears. His name is Ethan, and he's the reason I couldn't tell you the truth.
The coffee shop was nearly empty at 3 in the afternoon. Just David, Maya, and the weight of 2 years' worth of secrets between them. Marcus had taken Ethan to the Children's Museum, giving them space to navigate the wreckage of Maya's revelation. Her name was Claire, Maya began, her hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. She was my younger sister, and she was complicated. Beautiful, impulsive, drawn to dangerous men. David sat across from her, still reeling. Ethan is her son. Yes, his biological father. Maya's voice caught. His name is Tony Castellano. He's in prison now, but when Claire was with him, our lives became a nightmare. Maya's eyes grew distant, and David could see her sliding back into memories she'd tried to bury. Claire thought she could change him. She thought having a baby would make him want to be better. Instead, it made him more possessive, more violent. What happened? Tony controlled everything. Where Claire went, who she talked to, how she spent money. When Ethan was 3, Claire finally found the courage to leave. She came to my apartment at 2 in the morning with nothing but the clothes on her back and a terrified little boy who barely spoke. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I helped her get a restraining order, found her a safe house. For 6 months, we thought we were free. Claire was getting back on her feet. Ethan was starting to laugh again. She was even dating someone new. Marcus? Marcus, Maya confirmed. He was a teacher at Ethan's daycare. Patient, gentle, everything Tony wasn't. Claire fell hard, and for the first time in years, I thought my sister might actually be happy. David reached across the table, covering Maya's trembling hand with his own. What went wrong? Tony got out on parole early. Good behavior. Maya's voice turned bitter. Claire was working late one night. She'd gotten a job as a waitress at this little diner. Tony was waiting in the parking lot when her shift ended. The silence stretched between them. Heavy with grief, David was only beginning to understand. The police said it looked like an accident at first. Claire's car hit a tree on a rainy road. But there were witnesses who saw Tony's truck following her. By the time they arrested him, Claire was already... She whispered against his shirt. Maya. David moved to sit beside her, pulling her against his chest as sobs shook her small frame. She lived for 3 days in the hospital. Conscious, but we knew. The doctors knew. She made Marcus and me promise to keep Ethan safe, to never let Tony find him. She made us promise to love him like he was our own. So you took him. Marcus wanted to adopt him officially, but we couldn't risk Tony's family finding out where Ethan was. So I became his guardian unofficially. Marcus takes him during the week. He's got the stable job, the house, the normal life. I take weekends and help with everything else. David felt the pieces of his wife's secret life clicking into place. The mysterious expenses, the phone calls she took in other rooms, the way she sometimes looked at children with such fierce protectiveness. Tony doesn't know where Ethan is? We hope not. But he gets out in 2 years, and when he does... Maya looked up at David with eyes full of fear. I couldn't drag you into this. I couldn't risk him finding out about you, using you to get to Ethan. David cupped her face in his hands, understanding finally flooding through him. You've been protecting all of us. I love that little boy like he's my own son. And I love you too much to let you get hurt because of choices I made before I met you.
3 weeks after David learned about Ethan, Maya's worst nightmare materialized in the form of a single phone call. She was making breakfast when her cell phone rang, Marcus's name flashing on the screen with an urgency that made her stomach drop. "He knows," Marcus said without preamble, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Tony knows about Ethan." Maya's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the kitchen floor. "That's impossible. He's still in prison." His brother Vincent came to the school yesterday, asking questions about Ethan. The principal called me immediately. Marcus's breath was ragged. "Maya, he was asking about pickup procedures, emergency contacts. He knows exactly where Ethan is." David appeared in the doorway, taking in Maya's pale face and the coffee spreading across the floor. Without a word, he grabbed paper towels and began cleaning up the mess, his movements calm and deliberate. "Where is Ethan now?" Maya demanded. "With me. I picked him up early and we're at my place. But Maya, we can't stay here. Vincent knows where I live." Okay. Maya forced herself to think through the panic. "Bring him here. David and I will figure something out." "Are you sure? If they follow us to your house..." "David knows everything," Maya said, meeting her husband's steady gaze. "He's going to help us." An hour later, Marcus arrived with Ethan and 2 hastily packed bags. The little boy seemed to sense the tension, staying close to Maya's side while the adults huddled in the living room. "I've been thinking," David said, his voice surprisingly calm for someone whose life had been turned upside down 3 weeks ago. "My family has a cabin in the mountains, about 3 hours north. It's isolated, off the grid. We could take Ethan there while we figure out next steps." Marcus looked skeptical. "We can't run forever." "We're not running," David replied firmly. "We're buying time to do this right. I've already called my lawyer. If Tony's family is actively searching for Ethan, we need legal protection." "Uncle David?" Ethan's small voice interrupted their planning. All 3 adults turned to look at the boy who'd been quietly coloring at the coffee table. "Yes, buddy?" David said, his voice softening automatically. "Are the bad men coming to take me away from Aunt Maya?" The question hit the room like a physical blow. Maya knelt beside Ethan, pulling him into her arms. "No one is going to take you anywhere, sweetheart. Uncle David and Marcus and I, we're all going to keep you safe." "Like Mommy tried to do?" Maya felt tears threatening. Ethan rarely mentioned Claire directly, but when he did, it was with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a child who'd learned too young that the world could be dangerous. "Exactly like Mommy tried to do," Maya whispered, "and we're going to do a much better job." That evening, as they prepared to leave for the cabin, Maya found David loading our car with supplies. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "This isn't your fight." David straightened, meeting her eyes in the dim light of their garage. "That little boy calls me Uncle David. You're my wife. Marcus is part of your family, which makes him part of mine." He stepped closer, his hands framing her face. "This became my fight the moment I fell in love with you." "I love you," she whispered against his lips as he kissed her. "I love you too, all of you." As they drove into the night, Ethan sleeping peacefully in his car seat between them, Maya realized for the first time in 2 years she wasn't carrying her burdens alone.
6 months later, Maya stood in the kitchen of their new house,
watching through the window as David taught Ethan how to throw a baseball in their backyard. The legal proceedings had been exhausting. Restraining orders, custody hearings, endless meetings with social workers, but Tony's parole had been revoked after Vincent's harassment was reported, buying them several more years of safety. "You're thinking too loud again," Marcus said from the doorway, echoing David's old phrase with a smile. Maya turned to find him holding 2 cups of coffee, his face more relaxed than she'd seen it in years. "Just watching my boys," she said, accepting the warm mug gratefully. "Your boys," Marcus repeated, shaking his head with wonder. "A year ago, if someone told me I'd be co-parenting with my ex-girlfriend and her husband, I'd have thought they were crazy." "Technically, we were never really together," Maya pointed out. "We just thought we were supposed to be." It had taken months of family therapy to untangle the complicated web of grief, obligation, and genuine care that bound them together. Marcus had been in love with Claire, not Maya, but had convinced himself that honoring Claire's memory meant creating a traditional family structure with Maya. Maya had been so focused on protecting Ethan that she'd nearly destroyed her chance at real love with David. "He's good with Ethan," Marcus observed, watching as David patiently showed the 6-year-old how to position his glove. "He loves him, really loves him, not just because of me." The sliding door opened and Ethan bounded in, grass stains on his knees and pure joy on his face. "Aunt Maya, did you see my catch? Uncle David says I'm getting really good." "I saw, sweetheart. You're amazing." Maya scooped him up for a hug, marveling at how much taller he'd gotten in just 6 months. David followed him inside, his cheeks flushed from the afternoon sun. "We need to talk about getting him signed up for Little League. This kid's got an arm." "Can I, Aunt Maya, please?" His eyes were bright with excitement. Maya looked around at her unconventional family, Marcus, who'd become like a brother, David, who'd embraced being a stepfather before it was even official, and Ethan, who was finally free to be a normal, happy child. "We'll all go to the games," she promised. Later that evening, after Ethan had been tucked into his new bedroom and Marcus had driven home to his apartment across town, Maya found David on their back porch, a beer in his hand and contentment in his eyes. "Any regrets?" she asked, settling beside him on the porch swing they'd installed last month. David considered the question seriously, the way he considered everything. About marrying a woman with secrets? About suddenly becoming a stepfather to a traumatized 6-year-old? About spending our first year of marriage in family therapy and legal proceedings? "When you put it like that, it sounds pretty terrible," Maya laughed. "It sounds like real life," David corrected, pulling her closer against his side. "Complicated, messy, beautiful real life." Maya tilted her head up to look at him. "I never expected this, you know. When I made that promise to Claire, I thought I was choosing between love and family. I never imagined I could have both." Maybe that's what Claire wanted all along. Maybe she knew that keeping Ethan safe would eventually lead you to something better than what you thought you deserved. Through the window, they could see Ethan's nightlight glowing softly, the little boy finally secure enough to sleep without fear. Maya thought about all the Saturday mornings stretching ahead of them, family breakfasts, baseball games, homework help, and the 1,000 small moments that make a life. "I love you," she whispered against David's neck, breathing in the scent that meant home and safety and forever. "I love you too, all of us." And for the first time in 3 years, Maya Henderson believed in happily ever after.